So let me start to present the project. MyGender is the first ever study in Portugal aimed to investigate how young adults engage with the technicity and imaginaries of mobile apps, incorporating them into their daily lives, embodying it in their daily practices, and negotiating and renegotiating from it their gender and sexual identities. So challenging research focus either on the risks and opportunities or on the uses and gratifications of digital practices, MyGender depart from an understanding of technology as producing meaning, subjectivity, and agency shaped by power relations. So adopting a critical perspective of contemporary digital media, the project will analyze mobile apps affordances, grammars, platform politics, and content, as well as their uses, appropriations, and embodiments to understand how they are shaping hegemonic normativity and changing young adulthood lives. So this afternoon, we will present our protocol for a systematic literature review as some results, as this task is still a work in progress. The presenters will be Ana Marta Flores and Eduardo Antunes. Ana Marta is a postdoctoral fellow researcher of MyGender. She holds a doctorate and a master's degree in journalism. She's a visiting professor at Nova University of Lisbon. And Ana Marta is a researcher associated with Nova Institute of Communication, ICENOVA, and coordinator of the Innovation Studies Research Group at iNova Media Lab. She's also a researcher at the Trends and Culture Management Lab at the University of Lisbon and Center for for Studies and Production in Hypermedia applied to journalism. Eduardo Antunes is a Master Fellow Research for the MyGender Project and a PhD student in Communication Science at the University of Coimbra, where he completed his master's degree in Journalism and Communication. Eduardo holds a bachelor degree in marketing from the University of Aveiro and is also a radio broadcast at RUC, Radio Universidade de Coimbra, assuming the role of co-coordinator of programs at the same radio station. After Ana Marta and Eduardo's presentation, we have the honor to have Elena Pilipets and Sofia Caldeira as discussants. Elena Pilipets is a postdoctoral researcher at the Department of Media and Communication at the University of Klagenfurt, Austria, and a researcher in iNova Media Lab, Nova University of Lisbon in Portugal. Her teaching and research interests are media cultural studies, internet research, digital methods, affect, and actor network theory. Sofia Caldeira is a researcher at Cicant at Lusófona University in Portugal. She holds a communication science PhD from Ghent University in Belgium, funded by the Portuguese Foundation for Science and Technology. Her research focused primarily on feminist media studies, social media, self-representation practices, politics of gender representation, and everyday aesthetics. She currently serves as vice chair of ECREA's Digital Culture and Communication section. So now I will give the floor to Ana Marta and Eduardo, and afterwards Elena and Sofia will present their thoughts and ideas on the main topics of our literature review. So Ana Marta and Eduardo, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Hello, thank you, Ines. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you for our great and amazing researchers, Sofia and Elena, to be here, and all the public, of course, and all the colleagues here. We have some colleagues here in the public. So here today, we are going to try to be very focused, right, on the specific task of literature review. So here we present our research protocol, which is basically divided in 3 main steps. Our focus is discover new scientific production related to various topics. So this process is adapted from the systematic literature review model Prisma 2020, this one. This is just a snapshot of the diagram. We chose to select two scientific databases to conduct the research, the Scopus from Elsevier and Web of Science from Clarivate. So we selected the time period to cover from 2011 to 2021. So it is a mapping of the last decade in which we included only articles published in English. So to cover the main areas of interest of MyGender project, we identified 9 thematic groups, and we are going to talk about it very soon. So once we have the results, we exported in, all the data in CSV files. We merged the results by cluster. We then removed the duplicates and performed the screening process to select the papers that can actually contribute to the project. So the spreadsheets presented data such as author, article, title, abstract, keywords, journal, article URL, among others. So in the third phase, with the information of title and abstract, we selected 542 from 2,770 articles. Continuing, so here we are trying not to bother you with all the details, but it's pretty important to understand what is the whole concept and what are the areas that we are interested in. So in the 9 different clusters, we started from a macro view to more specific approach. So as we expected, the first cluster, the one with user practices, and consumption of mobile apps are with more returning results. So, and the last one, the digital sexual cultures, would be the smallest with only 2 results. So the first category encompasses all typologies, aspects, nuances of the uses and appropriation of apps. How are these applications incorporating into the lives of young adults? What are the effects of their uses? How are the practice actually conducted and how are they perceived by this public? So in this case, we identified in most of the review results that the applications appear more as a means to develop research with another objective than to study the application itself and its relations. The second one, the gender identities and sexuality and digital mediated interfaces related to how individuals perceive themselves and what they call themselves, how they express their individuality to the world and to the digital environment. So many papers were related to new behaviors, as we can call quotes, new behaviors that we can actually say they are digital native behaviors such as catfishing, sexting, cyberbullying, or even in the confusion of in development, the sense of identity and sexuality in this age group. The third one, the gender dynamics of mobile apps. Here we go deeper on understanding the entanglements of mobile applications in a gendered approach. So we identified many research papers with a comparative view on genders related to dating, fitness, sexual health, mental health a lot, or even problematic use of mobiles in general. Now on the technicity and affordances and apps grammars, we are going to in a more technologic focused perspective. This cluster, has the idea of understanding from a technical point of view how the potential of the applications, how are the potential of the applications, what data is accessed, and what is actually technicity. And this is focused to Jana, that's here in our audience. So the results actually do not present much definitive concepts, since the grammars and the applications themselves are a moving target with constant updates. And identity performances and body representations. In this group, we had few results, and most were related to gender identity, but our interest is also how do gender performances and body representations differ in different types of mobile applications. So, for example, to what extent do mediated interfaces reproduce or even challenge normative gender imaginaries? How are gender identities negotiated in users' experience, or to what extent do mediated interface reproduce or challenging their normative imaginary. So this is the first group, and what we found and what we would expect in these categories.
Thank you, Ana Marta. And first of all, a very warm hello to everyone. It's my task to talk a little bit about the last 4 thematic clusters, and we'll talk about them in pairs, because they can be paired up, the first 2 and the last 2 ones. So algorithmic governance, as of course all of you may know, it's a broad research field that is dedicated to understand the implications of algorithmic driven technology on society. And nowadays, what is a technology that is not algorithmic driven? So this is a research field that is getting deeper and deeper and deeper as the days go by, and is interested on the social implications of, for example, artificial intelligence, of big data, of platform capitalism, of datafied knowledge, and so on. In the case of this thematic cluster, here what we found is that those papers are typically concerned with the development of technologies, mostly mobile apps, with a purpose for the improvement of specific social problematics. And typically those social problematics are also health problematics. The same applies to human technology interaction. That is also a broad research field. It's also called human computer interaction because initially it was only concerned with computers. So if you call it HCI or HTI and we search with both options, it has since expanded to cover all forms of information technology designs. Is now a multidisciplinary field that studies people's interactions with technology with the aim to better understand and improve the match between technology and the users of those technologies. In the case of this thematic cluster, there is a particular attention to the technology connection regarding health, like I said, in the algorithmic governance thematic cluster, and overall well-being, for example, fitness as well, overall well-being issues, but a particular emphasis on health topics. The last 2, but not least, mediated intimacy and digital sexual cultures. In mediated intimacy, we found two definitions of this concept. In here, we tried to use Dembra Chambers' one, that is a more broad definition of this concept, that is about a range of important personal connections, that is intimacies, that are made possible through all sorts of digital platforms that are designed to network, to connect, and to make people in general to interact. In the case of the papers that we found in this thematic cluster, they concern social media and especially dating apps and the users and the utilizations of those dating apps. It also includes papers about digital technologies and the agential capacity of digital technologies to present, to represent faces, bodies, in general, identities, and how people interact based on those identities and construct with it relationships, interactions, and therefore intimacies. And it is connected with digital sexual cultures that, like Ana Marta said, unfortunately, we only found 2 papers on this one. At first, before doing that research, we wanted this cluster to show an emphasis on a cultural building sense, even subcultural building sense of digital interactions that have a particular sexual aspect demarked on them. Since this cluster only has 2 papers, those expectations were not fully met. But those two papers have nonetheless that particular sexual marker of those interactions, of those digital interactions. And there's also a key interesting thing to point out is that the papers of that cluster regard as well social and cultural and even community-wise implications of those sexual interactions that are made through a digital and mediated environment. Here, we are just showing you guys a bit of examples of our search, the search that we did, in this case, for two of the thematic clusters, for users, practices, and consumption of mobile apps, and for gender dynamics of mobile apps. In every case, what we did was basically do a set of keywords, let's call it mathematic equations of words, that we searched both on Scopus and Web of Sciences databases, to which we added mobile apps and to which we added mobile applications. So we tried to collect all the talked about mobile apps, mobile applications, whatever you want to call it, but using that terminology of applications for the mobile technology. And just to point out another thing is that, for example, if you can see that those equations, like I was calling them, have, for example, plus young, minus old, and minus children, because my gender project has a very specific age cohort of people. We want to search young adults, so that means people from 18 to 30 years old. And we try to do that searching by young minus adult and minus children in order to not get papers that talk mainly about young people, and young people can be children, can be adolescents, it can be a sorts of things. And we also didn't want to focus on, let's say, older adults than people with more than 30 years old. In here, we have just an example of the screening process that we did. We exported, like Ana Marta said, the raw databases from each equation, from each combination of keywords in every single thematic cluster. Then we reunited them in these Google Sheets. In here, we have two of them just to show, for example, the categories in which we decided to classify these papers. So we have information, like basic information, for example, like authors, journal, the year that paper was released. We have the database, the title, abstract, the link, and then we tried to answer which methodological approach that paper has. For example, to which country are they assigned to, and other steps that gave us the details that we are exposing here in this more quantitative approach, quantitative results to this qualitative review.
Okay, so coming back, here we have just a quantitative overview in order to make it very visual and how the first results appeared for us. So they are showing both by database and by thematic grouping. So here we have not yet selected papers. So this is to be the part of the final review. So we have the total of 2,770 articles here. So it is quite evident that in yellow, we see the results obtained by the Scopus platform. And that is almost 5 times more numerous than the result of the Web of Science. It is also quite clear that, as we have already mentioned, the cluster of uses and practices of mobile apps, which has a total of 1,903 papers, is many times greater than the one of the digital sexual cultures, for example. And here I can actually zoom a little bit in order to make it clear. Let's see if it works. Yes, here's just to show it better because I think it's kind of small. And then we can see like identity performances has only 8, technicity has 13, so and so on. So here we can see the numbers. It's just in the first overview of the results that we have. And then here we have only the kind of the to show you how was our corpus now that we have, like in yellow here we have the total per cluster. In orange we have the total without the duplicates, because it's very common that the same article appears in both databases. And in gray were the selected one, which they have in kind of or a minimal or a great contribution to the project. So it's the same idea. You can see the biggest clusters and the smallest one. So it's just to show again, very visual, how we can see these results.
Well, in here we have 2 word clouds. On the left side of your screen, there is the first one that we did. And these are word clouds with the keywords of the papers. In the case of the one of the on the left part of your screen is the keywords of all results without any of the selection, any of the removing parts of the duplicates and the qualitative selection. And we decided to not include on these word clouds words like mobile app, the words that talked about the things that we were searching for. Besides that, on the left side of your screen, on that word cloud, there's one that almost screams, that is health, in that screaming yellow right in the center. We also have, for example, health, which is the basically health on the mobile. That's the M part of it. HIV patient, man, because as you will see the further slides, it is a current very present theme on our research, at least for the papers that we found. A lot of papers talking about HIV, a lot of papers talking about men who have sex with men, and sometimes talking about the uses, the appropriations, dating apps, but always with that end, the end of talking with HIV, talking about men, talking about health in general. In the second part, in the word cloud that you have on your right, it's the one with the keywords after that selection process that we explained. And the first thing that we see is that big yellow health that was very central on the left side is no longer on the right side. However, and in spite of our selection, the selection that we did, the health issues are very present in our database still. But at least it's not health in general that is being talked about, it's health in the mobile world talked about. It's health that is being pointed out as the most present keyword. And then we have the others that I was talking about that are connected with those qualitative inputs: man, dating, social, sexual, and still HIV.
So here we have another quantitative overview. So in order to better understand the methodologies conducted in the different approaches and the different clusters, so we were also classified the selected files by the methodological approach. So we observed that there is a certain constancy in mixed methods throughout most of the clusters, in which quantitative data is obtained that generates also qualitative insights. So quantitative research is very prominent in the uses of the category uses and practices, giving the interest and ease of access to data from the application use. So Only to mention the other category is when we classified some papers that did not clarify the methodology, use it, or they applied a very mixed or very experimental technique that is not very specific and did not qualify to one or another, or even the mixed methods. So here's just in a way, of course, we see the bigger squares are bigger because there are bigger number of articles there. But for example, we can see in gender identities and sexuality and digital mediated interfaces, we didn't find any paper that used quantitative data, which is kind of understandable. But for example, in the technicity and affordancy and apt grammars, we didn't find anything related to quantitative, and it kind of would make sense. But also it's very important to say that this one has only 6 papers, I guess. So this is not a big cluster. So this is just kind of to have an overview in quantitative perspective.
So in here, like I said before, we took the main country of each paper in those sheets on the databases. And this is no surprise, of course, but we think it is interesting to still show it to you that United States has a tremendous role in the production. And here I use the word production, not lightly, but the word production as the word production means, in the production of science, the production of academic knowledge. So most of the papers are linked to the United States, and then also to other countries that are of the English, that are English speaking. For example, Australia is the second one, and United Kingdom the third, and even Canada is the fifth. We would also like to point out, for example, China, Germany, and South Korea that have also showed on this research a strong number of papers of the database. And for example, that we found some articles, some papers from here, from Portugal, and the same number of papers that we found from Portugal is the same number that we found from countries that have very distinct, even scientific, distinct approaches and scientific, in truth, realities. Like, for example, Kenya, Cyprus, Belgium, and Bangladesh, but still a very strong presence, like in every dimension of academia and in every dimension of our society of the United States. In terms of general notes, like we've been saying through this presentation, there is a particular emphasis on health. In terms of the clusters of algorithmic governance and human technology interaction, that emphasis is typically on health implications of those technologies, sometimes mobile apps that are developed to have health implications to improve the health issues in general. Most of the times, health issues that are connected with sexual issues, and that are the talk that I was saying before, men who have sex with men, HIV, stuff like that. The two clusters that get a little bit away of this very strong health conversation are mediated intimacy and digital sexual cultures. And on that, the core is online dating behaviors, are the online dating behaviors that happen not only on dating apps, but also with the appropriation and reappropriation of other platforms like forums, like social media, social network, digital platforms in general. However, some of the times those papers will end up on those health implications, like all of the remaining thematic clusters.
So also we noticed that we found very few results on female, and we actually tried to look for women, girls, every related words on the female, and we found only 6. Actually, this is the results focused on the keywords, not specifically on what is written in an article, but in the keywords that the authors use it, or even the platform indexed as these keywords. Also, we actually didn't see, it's kind of really rare, the non-binary genders. So we think that it may be kind of restrictive to say, as not a problematic maybe, because we are actually actively searching for gender and we didn't find the other genders that are existing now. So we actually noticed this across the category, all categories. So this is one point to be considered. Also, as we would see that the prevalence of the perception of gender as unnecessarily binary in all categories, specifically when we see the focus on health. So there is only male and female. There is no in between, no differences. It's even considered, it's not never, but I mean, it's really rare to appear any kind of consideration on this. Also, we noticed a very pathological approach when considering men's sexuality. So it's almost 100% of the time considering men who have sex with men, or risk behaviors, or HIV, or condomless sex, or any kind of related to the sexuality is very related to diseases in general and not to health, even though health is the most common word that we saw across categories. So as we saw, the health, or M-health, as Eduardo already said about the mobile health or e-health, all this kind of the same idea of related to health are most frequent topics. So we can say this for sure. In use specifically is the most is the biggest focus in the last decade. We can also, of course, consider in a more contextual view that maybe this area, the medicine and so on, they have more funding to do research. So this could also reflect on these results. So, but even though we can still see this very big difference, and also when we look for applications there, like mobile applications, they appear, as I think I already mentioned, that they are more like a researching tool to many approaches that the topic itself to be studied. So our focus is trying to understand the applications in the lives of young adults, and not specifically use the application to get some information. And this is the most common use that we identified in this exploratory review. So I think now we are kind of approaching to the end. Go.
Yes. Now we also have a critical view of the work that we've done and the work that other team members of the MyGender project contributed to, and we are very thankful for that, of course. Like Ana Marta said, there is that lack, Ana Marta, no, like me said, yeah, actually, there is a lack of countries, lack of diversity in terms of the countries that produce science, that produce academic knowledge, and therefore that may, in fact, produce, I will use that word again, that may produce some kind of specific views, some specific habits on the literature in itself in general. We also think that some index journals have a long period of validation and some results can be outdated. This because we are here talking about a problem or a theme that is in itself technological. and technology, as the days go by, changed a lot. So that's also why we wanted to do this research for a 10-year basis from 2011 to 2021. But we know that things that were written in 2011, 2012, 2013, even 14 or even 15, nowadays in 2022 are outdated, no longer apply. And the same will go on, because that's how life works and that's how technology works. Maybe if someone will apply this project again, the same methodological approach, maybe in 2032 we'll have the same discussion, that the things that we are here discussing today will be outdated, but that's how life goes. So we are attentive to that, and we are attentive to the limitations, of course, of trying to do a systematic review. We know that, for example, as the technology changes, the way that we speak of the same technology, or of at least similar technology, changes as well. So talking about mobile apps, apps, mobile applications for the cell phone or for the smartphone, even that is a way of talking about this that wasn't the way ever. So we know that there is other scientific productions out there. There are other scientific productions out there that talk about social media, that talk about websites, that talk about digital platforms, but do not talk about mobile apps, do not use that terminology. Because of that, and that's why, for example, we have clusters like digital sexual clusters that only got 2 papers. We don't believe that there are only 2 papers in the last 2 years that ever talked about digital sexual cultures. But people don't talk about mobile apps, and that's also one of the reasons of the importance of this project, in our opinion. And so because of it, we want to implement the second part of the Prisma model that we are following, the version 2, and that is done by the identification of studies by other methods, such as citations in papers already selected and recommended journals. And in the end, we want to do a hybrid mode of a review, adding this systematic review to a qualitative one. And to that qualitative one, we have already received from team members of the MyGender project some qualitative inputs with references, authors, papers, books, chapters of books, about things that can improve and can add on that qualitative sense to top on this more quantitative aspects that we've been talking through this presentation.
Okay, so here we, Darlene, want to thank you very much for your attention. And here we invite all of you to visit our website or our social media and follow us. This is the time that the final of the video on YouTube, and so here you can subscribe. So this is just our advertising moment. But if you have any other suggestions or doubts or any kind of contributions you can do, our email is open and we would be very happy to hear from you. So now I pass the word again to Professor Inés and to our guests.
Thank you, dear Ana Marta. And now, Elena and Sofia, the floor is yours. So please go ahead.
Oh, that's great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Sofia, who goes first?
Elena, go first. You go.
Okay, I go. Well, first of all, this is like quite a detailed and comprehensive and very structured approach to literature review. Well, the point that you have been explaining at the end of your presentation, obviously, I think that this second phase of diving into the issues, going beyond Web of Science, going beyond the indexed journals, it's going to be quite a crucial phase, I guess, of trying to yes, getting to the specificity maybe of your research questions, and also looking at let's say points of reference that are less visible, also infrastructurally in terms of science infrastructure or research infrastructure, especially because it's such a let's say sensitive also topic that you are looking at. So yes, this would be the first thing I've been thinking about, and the second one, looking at your word clouds, and obviously this presence of health on the one hand, but then on the other hand, in the second cloud on the right, what I thought was interesting is the focus on the self, because it was one of the issues that were very, very present. And here I was wondering, when reviewing stuff that you've been reading and looking for, I mean, when we talk about apps, we should think about, like, connections and disconnections of, being together, growing apart, and so on, communities, yeah. The notion of self, in a way, and the fact that it appears in quantitative terms so frequently, and the fact that it is so present, I think it might be interesting to look at the associations attached to the self, whether it is connected to the self-representation or whatever in these contexts, especially. Whether the self is connected to self-care, self-experience, intimacy, and so on and so forth. So this was something I thought was really interesting. I mean, it's not surprising that it appears there, but I think that the associations might get you maybe along some of the new directions, maybe, or maybe more diverse directions in terms of maybe other aspects of visibility, of sexuality, and all things attached to that. So these are like maybe two main things that I noticed while you were presenting. And maybe the last one, the thing that I would be curious about is the Portuguese context, and whether you were able to find something like a significant amount of papers discussing this context, in particular, like the cultural specificity, or not. Yeah, and this would be it.
Thank you, Elena. I think, yeah, thank you for the inputs. And actually, there is very interesting way to actually go deep on this self and what is the connection with this. We didn't have, still didn't have time to go deeper on this. And here, just to make you, just to tell you which are the frequency of works in Portugal. This is considering the first author, right? So it's not, sometimes it's, the first author is from Portugal, but they are studying, I don't know, something in another place. But I'm going to put this, I'm here putting in from Z to A to be more, is Portugal, we have 3 papers selected, not discovered, but selected only 3. And all of them didn't actually focus on a specific cultural, contextual Portuguese environment. So this is for, like, in one hand, it's bad because we don't have many resources, or
Well, it's good for your project. It shows how
Exactly.
relevant it is.
It shows the relevancy of this project. So and I think and this make not only me, I guess, but all the group very proud of being studying something that is not very well studied. But I mean, again, considering the context that we are actually looking for, the specific databases in English, maybe if we look in Portuguese, we could find some specifics. So yeah, I mean, there's all some limitations, and we know that. We try to be very critical about it. But yes, considering where, if we can consider English like a kind of neutral language that science is discussed and produced, and we have pairs to compare. So yeah, we have a very little number. So that's why this project is very important. So yeah, I don't know. Sorry, Inez. I'm sorry if I.
No, go ahead.
I think
I was just answering Jana on the chat. Jana is asking about the work of Rita Sepúlveda and Jorge Vieira, and their work actually appears, I think, in OBS.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if it's appearing in this specific, because I don't think that they use some of the words that we were as a keyword. So yeah, I know that it's
focusing on dating apps and not just on and specifically on young adults.
Yeah, I think this was it. I'm not sure if it's appearing, because we actually read her research, and it's actually mentioned on the project itself, but I'm not sure if there is in this. I can actually check if you want, but I mean, that's why we wanted in the future research add more layers to this process, in order to have a broader view, and more deep, also not only broader but deeper, considering our context, the Portuguese context. But now I think now I pass the word to Inez, which is going to pass the word to Sofia.
And now I'm going to give the floor to Sofia, of course.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to say it's great seeing this kind of work, such a systematic insight into literature on mobile apps, which usually is a bit like spread around, and to see it condensed in this very visual way of showing it, I think really helps get a sense of the field. My comments build a bit on what Elena was saying. I think the second stage of continuing to expand the literature review will really bring a lot of insights. I feel that maybe one approach that could be taken that might be quite interesting, because mobile apps are often not appearing with those exact keywords, and there are limitations to database search, would be to try to set up some collaborative efforts for creating a database of relevant articles. I know that there are networks like the Meme Studies Network, who created this working reading lists where everybody can contribute. And perhaps like that, it would be a way to get to not only those journals that are not indexed, those smaller journals, those open access journals that are producing a lot of interesting research in this field. And that would be great to have as an input as well. But also perhaps to get to some studies on the Portuguese context. And I know that it's very sparse literature that is emerging in this context. So it's great to see projects like your project coming to get us some specific insights on the field in Portugal, but it would be great to have some insights on that as well. And also perhaps trying to, on a second approach or a parallel approach, searching for specifically Portuguese articles, because even though English is a lingua franca of sorts, there is still some research being published in Portuguese that might be important to add to get a sense of the field. And a question that I had looking at the results that you were presenting was in terms of discipline division. If you had divided the papers by disciplines, or if you had made a pre-selection of specific disciplines, filtering by journals, for example, because it might be interesting to think of differences on how different disciplines are engaging. Like the focus on HIV seems very medical sciences, and I was wondering if the studies coming from the fields of media studies and communication studies were addressing them in different ways, or if they were as doomsday concerns about mobile apps and sexuality in mobile apps. So yeah, I will leave the question because to give chance to get your inputs.
I don't know if Eduardo wants to add.
Yeah, I can answer this one just to pair things out. And yeah, one thing that we've noticed is, for example, there are some African countries that were mentioned on that graphic, and most of the times they were named because it was health concerns like HIV, for example. In the Portuguese context, I'm not really sure if it was the case. And yeah, that is a particular emphasis on Africa because of the HIV that is unfortunately killing more people than in any other country continent. And yeah, we want to focus on that Portuguese aspect, that Portuguese landscape on this, and also reading things that are not indexed and not indexed also on Scopus and on Web of Sciences. And that's why we want to do that more qualitative approach to add on this one, because as we notice that it has its flaws, like any other systematic review that is achieved through combinations of keywords. It will always end up in something that is a little bit mathematical, not entirely qualitative. So we thank you for that feedback, and we want to add that. We will sure add that on the review. And if you have any authors in your minds, please send us, because it will be good for us for sure.
I believe she has many. I'm only to concerning about the disciplines that Sofia asked. So we actually tried before, selected only or even communication, or I don't know, maybe cultural or even humanities. So we had like very few results. So we thought that this, and we did like an exercise, exploratory exercise before deciding. So we actually left that open. So that's why, of course, we have some results specifically on this one. But I think this could be interesting if we actually maybe in the next year of the project try to maybe update the topics and try to, I don't know, maybe focus only in 2022 to see what is new on these specifics. The actually one idea that we had is trying to use the keywords in a chronological view in order to see if like genders, appears in different, like most recent years, it's going to be more clear that they are using these specific words that I don't know, maybe 15 years ago didn't actually exist, or if exist, didn't use it in the way that we are using now. So maybe we could focus on the specific disciplines in order to have more narrow and focused, and not only, I mean, with the majority of the health, or not is bad, but it's just kind of a diversion from what we actually want to study. So only about a comment on this. And
can I, Anna, can I
sure.
just add one thing on that one about the scientific areas, because I forgot to say what I wanted about it, is that we also have in mind that this kind of academic production is in a very broad interdisciplinary area. And so we didn't want to select things in order to be lefting out others that really talked about this. And doing it also after having the papers is also difficult, because identifying things as medical is easy, but all the other sciences is difficult to point out and to choose just one. We think that we won't end up with anything to show, in fact, because, for example, in a paper, we can have a specific medical approach, and that paper is only about medicine. In other, we can have communication, we can have sociology, we can have even a bit of medicine, we can have psychology, we can have gender studies, and therefore we'll have papers having different kind of measurements if you would compare them by the scientific areas.
Mm-hmm.
That was it, just this little.
And I want to thank you also, Sofia, again for it's all written down. Inês, do you want to?
Yes, I would like to thank a lot to Sofia Caldeira and Elena Pilipets, and to everyone who, in the end of the week, in the Friday, in the late afternoon or in the evening, it depends on time zone, are here with us. I would just like to present the team of the project. But first, I would like to thank a lot Ana Marta and Eduardo for all the efforts. Actually, this is a quite, I think, a quite interesting team. So I would like to thank all researchers, all members of the team, and present them. So Rita Basílio de Simões is the co-PI, Silvio Correia Santos is another member, Sofia José Santos, another member, Filipa Subtil is here as my left side of the screen. Rita Alcair is also here. Jana Omena is also here. And of course, Ana Marta Flores and Eduardo. We also have junior researchers that are here, Frederico Fonseca, Natalia Reis, and Luisa Carreira. And we also have international junior researchers in mobility programs, Gabriela Poliak from Romania and Laís Rossio from Brazil. And also our consultants, I would like also to present them, Aristea Fotopoulou, Caroline Gerlitz, Sander de Ryder, and Tiny Bacher. So yes, Jana Joselli, yes, Omena, sorry, I forgot to say your middle name. So thank you, everyone, and have a nice weekend. And Ana Marta is just saying here that it's a Carnival Friday for some of us, yes. So have a nice weekend. Thank you a lot. We soon will have a database on our website, so follow us on our website and also on our social media accounts. Thank you. and goodbye.
Thank you,
you so much.
everyone.
Have a good evening.
Have a
Bye.
good
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.